Previously on the Criminalish podcast. Travis Dante James Rudolph was born on September 15th, 1995. Now, Dominique Jones has been described as the girlfriend of Travis Rudolph for about a year and a half prior to the incident in April of 2021. And another thing that is important to note is that the relationship between Travis and Dominique is quite tumultuous. On April 6th, 2021, Dominique went over to Travis' house where he lived with his older brother and mother for a chill night in. Dominique decides to go through Travis' phone, and when she does, she finds a series of text messages on his phone with another woman named Kayla Moore. But this woman proceeds to go on a tear through Travis's house. Firstly, she rips the phone out of his hand and smashes it on the ground and breaks his phone. She then reportedly destroyed his PlayStation. She also hit him in the head with a metal trophy that was in his house, and she later hit him in the head with a bottle of tequila. However, throughout this incident, Dominique also claimed that during this argument, Travis, quote, manhandled her, end quote, and picked her up off of her feet and slammed her onto the ground twice. However, Travis's brother comes outside and tells her to leave the house, but not before she attempts to get the last word in, threatening Travis by stating she would, quote, have her brother come and kill him, end quote, as she leaves. Now, when she gets into her car, she calls her younger brother, Keyshawn, and a man named Tyler Robinson. The group starts to come up with a plan in which Dominique creates a group chat with Keyshawn and Tyler and sends the following text message, quote, go shoot his shit up, end quote, to which her brother, Keyshawn, responded with the following, quote, Travis is a dead man walking, end quote. Now, unfortunately, at the time, Travis did not take these threats seriously at all. He would later be forced to take her threats very seriously when a few hours later, the Rudolph household is disrupted by a series of loud and sudden banging on the front door. Apparently, Keyshawn was at the door and demanding to speak to Travis. So Travis steps down through the doorway and onto the porch, and as soon as he does, he is punched in the left eye by Tyler Robinson. And after that, two other men jump from their hiding spots, and the four of them begin to jump Travis. Travis later stated that Tyler Robinson took out a gun and pointed it at him. According to Travis, when this happened, he immediately fled the fight and ran back inside to his home to retrieve his AR-15 rifle that he had left in the living room. When he runs back outside with the rifle in hand and begins to point it at the four men, Keyshawn, Tyler, and the other two unknown assailants fled the scene, and as the group of men got back to the car, they began to drive while pointing guns at Travis, at which point he opened fire on the vehicle. In total, Travis fired at least 39 shots at the vehicle as the men finally drove away. A couple of hours later, at around 4 o'clock in the morning on April 7th, 2021, Travis Rudolph was arrested and charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder with a firearm. Hi, I'm Dev.
And I'm Cam.
And you're listening to Criminalish, a true crime podcast where two best friends trade stories ranging from the wild and wacky to the downright messed up. So today I will be continuing to tell Cam about the case of Travis Rudolph, which took place in April of 2021. If you're here really early, you're listening on Patreon. And we just want to say thank you for being a member of our Patreon. And if you stuck it out and waited the 2 weeks, thank you for being a supportive fan and waiting for this update. And if you're like, what do you mean this is a part 2 episode? I didn't even know there was a part 1. Don't worry, boo. I got you. Part 1 is linked in the description of today's episode. So go down there, listen to part 1 or watch part 1 if you're on YouTube, and then come back to this one. We got you. But before we get into the rest of today's case, what you drinking, Fran?
Girl, I am still sipping on that rosé from last week or 2 weeks ago, depending if you're on Patreon or on our other streaming platforms. What about you? What you drinking?
Girl, I'm just drinking water at this point. I need to stay hydrated. I got big plans in the future that I need to be well hydrated for. So that's what I'm doing.
And if you're like, man, they keep mentioning big plans, big things happening. What are they talking about? Be patient. You'll know soon. Maybe in a week or 2.
We got you. Cam and I have never let you down, have we? And if we have, don't answer that.
Right. Shut up.
We didn't know.
We're sorry, I guess. Dang.
Here, damn.
Literally.
So when we last left off, Travis was being arrested and charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 3 counts of first-degree attempted murder. So I'm sure you're wondering what happened. How do we get to Travis being arrested and charged with these 4 counts after the men fled the scene of the crime? And as you can imagine, a Cadillac with 39 bullet holes in it is not going to get very far. So after a short distance, I believe it was only 5 miles, the Cadillac stalls out and Keyshawn calls 911 from a nearby gas station. There, Keyshawn told police dispatch that he and his 3 friends had been attacked by Travis Rudolph and that at least 2 of his friends had been shot, one of whom was actively in the front seat and bleeding out. Police are quickly dispatched to the 2 locations, one being the gas station, the other being Travis's home. When they get to the gas station, they quickly find the black Cadillac full of bullet holes and a young man by the name of Sebastian Jean-Jacques, unresponsive in the passenger seat with multiple gunshot wounds. It would later be determined that he was shot 10 different times and was later pronounced dead at the scene. While approaching Travis' house, the police would actually find Tyler Robinson on the side of the road, also with multiple gunshot wounds. He was shot twice, once in the back and once in the hip, and was transported to a hospital in critical but stable condition. When the men were asked what happened, they told officers that they went to confront Travis about an altercation that he had had with Dominique, and they claimed that the altercation got out of hand and that Travis had shot them unprovoked. And this is what leads to Travis being arrested at 4 a.m. on April 7th, 2021, just within 4 hours of the incident. And he would later be charged with 1 count of first-degree murder for the death of Sebastian and 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder with a firearm for the alleged attempted murder of the other 3 men, Keyshawn Jones, Tyler Robinson, and Christopher Lowe. And Travis would initially be held without bond. And I want to be clear that these charges were filed promptly. It didn't take them a while to charge him with this murder. So now let's get into the police investigation into this case, because I'm sure you're wondering, man, this story has quite a few holes in it. So the police would start by interviewing both Keyshawn and Christopher at the hospital where they took Tyler Robinson. And the lead detective would also interview Dominique because she came to the hospital. I'm presuming because Keyshawn called her and told her what happened. And during this interview, Dominique described her brother as being 2 years younger than her and as someone she is extremely close to and someone that she tells everything to. So she told detectives that she told her brother about the incident from that night and that Keyshawn's intention for visiting Travis was simply, quote, to talk, end quote. And in this statement to Detective Emily Vanderlaan, Dominique notably did not disclose any of the text messages she had sent to her brother and Tyler that night. Furthermore, she also omitted details about her own actions, such as breaking Travis's phone, hitting him with the trophy and the tequila bottle, or making threats to Travis's family. Detective Emily would also interview Keyshawn and Christopher at the hospital, and initially they told police that they were unarmed when they went to Travis's home, and that the fight escalated after they planned to go over there and talk to Travis. And I just want to note some interesting information about Keyshawn and Christopher's interviews with the detective. And that is that they are extremely short. Reportedly, Keyshawn was only interviewed for 10 minutes and Christopher was only interviewed for 7 minutes, during which they both stated that Travis escalated the incident into a fight and that they tried to leave and Travis chased them down before opening fire on them. It is also noted that neither of these statements are recorded.
Were these given in the hospital?
Yes.
I think that could potentially explain not why they weren't recorded, because I'm sure that officers and detectives still carry voice recorders on them at the very least, but why they were short in case they were still getting treatment for some of the wounds that they had sustained.
Well, that's actually the interesting thing. Keyshawn and Christopher didn't really have any physical wounds, so they were actually released from medical care. So that's when they did their interviews. It wasn't like they were sitting on the back of an ambulance and she was trying to ask them questions. They were kind of sitting in the waiting room waiting for Tyler to be all right, in all honesty.
I rescind my statement.
It's an interesting thought process. I don't know. So, of course, the officers have already taken Keyshawn, Dominique's, and Christopher's statements. And now it's time to talk to Tyler. And he was interviewed shortly after he woke up in his hospital bed. And when he woke up, he initially corroborates the story that Keyshawn and Christopher told the police already. And he, again, specifically denied bringing a gun with him at all, which, if this is the case, makes Travis' version of events completely implausible. So police initially completely believed the statements of Dominique, Keyshawn, Christopher, and Tyler, which is what led them to Travis's place to place him under arrest. Now, when Travis is arrested, he gave a statement to police and insisted that Tyler Robinson and Sebastian Jean-Jacques had pulled their guns on him first and that his actions were in self-defense. And his mother was also interviewed, and she also stated that her son's actions were in self-defense. However, this did not matter to the police, as he was promptly charged the next day with first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder. And of course, the police went off of the statements of the alleged victims in the case, and it became clear that Travis was arrested and charged based on about 30 minutes of interviews with victims and pretty much no collection of physical evidence. So after Travis is arrested, charged, and held without bond, police begin their actual investigation, during which they start to collect evidence that seemingly goes against what some of the alleged victims of the case are saying. For starters, just hours after the incident, police found a gun discharged in a bush near Travis's home, and police are able to quickly find out that this gun does not belong to Travis, as they had already collected his AR-15 rifle, as well as his personal weapon that he kept in his bedroom. So, who could this gun belong to? So, police go back to the hospital, and they decide to re-interview Tyler Robinson once again. Now remember, Tyler stated that all of his friends were unarmed and nobody had a gun, and that Travis escalated the fight. However, when police confront Tyler with the information that they found a gun near Travis's home, Tyler admitted that the gun belonged to him and that he had brought it with him. Tyler also said that he tossed the gun over a gate because he didn't want to have a gun on him when he was talking to police. Now, I want to make it clear there is no such thing as a perfect victim. I can understand why Tyler probably thought it would be a bad look if he had a gun on him when he was talking to police about being shot, especially in the context of everybody else is saying that we didn't bring any guns, that nobody had any guns, and now Tyler has a gun. But when the police do catch you in one lie, unfortunately, you will be scrutinized for everything you say after that because you have been caught in a lie.
Exactly. Like you said, no such thing as a perfect victim. I can understand the thought process, but the fact you thought they wouldn't find it, and later we'll definitely get into some commentary on the actions of the people in this case. But yeah, and I could assume Tyler is probably more likely to tell the truth now because he was more seriously harmed in this attack than Keyshawn and Chris.
Exactly. But unfortunately, I don't know if Tyler is going to be our most trusting witness here, especially because it seems that Tyler's story continues to evolve every time he talks to police. In later statements, Tyler said that Keyshawn actually sold him the gun that police had recovered from the crime scene. And he also stated that Sebastian had, quote, adamantly told him to bring his gun that night, end quote. And that, quote, everyone knew it, end quote. Meaning that, according to Tyler, he was told to bring his gun and everybody knew he had his gun. So why are they all saying that they came unarmed?
Questions that need answers. Because somebody lying.
Somebody is lying for sure. Because again, under the assumption that everyone knew at minimum Tyler had his gun on him for this quote unquote talk with Travis, I find it extremely convenient that the one person who Travis specifically said pointed a gun at him was indeed armed. And then to put an icing on the cake, in an even later statement, Tyler's story evolved again. But this time he claimed he didn't remember any of the details of the night, including receiving any text messages from Dominique or Keyshawn, who shot at him, giving a statement to police, the fight itself, who was driving the car, or him throwing the gun away. Now, if you think Tyler looks bad now, just wait, boo, because we're about to talk about Miss Dominique.
Let's get into it. I'm ready.
Let's do it. So, if you remember, Dominique gave a statement to police at the hospital where she claimed that Keyshawn was only going to Travis's house to talk to him and failed to mention any of the text messages that happened between her and her brother and his friend. She also failed to admit to her role in the fight that took place before the incident. But a week later, on April 15th, 2021, Detective Emily would invite Dominique to the police station to give a formal statement about the events. And during this second interview, the detective asked her if she can have her consent to search her phone. And initially, Dominique hesitates because she doesn't know that Tyler has already started singing like a canary. But why would they need her phone in this investigation? However, after this hesitation, she signs a consent form to search her phone. But she does not leave her phone with the police that day. Instead, she leaves and her friend drops off her phone the following day to the police station on April 16th. And personally, I just found that a little weird. That why is she allowed to leave with her phone that is presumably evidence?
Right. Like, I know y'all can recover deleted messages, but why make it harder for yourselves?
Right. So, in addition to the tomfoolery leading up to this interview, Dominique's statements begin to change as well. During this interview, Dominique admitted to sending a group text message instructing Keyshawn and Tyler Robinson to, quote, go shoot his shit up, end quote. But she claimed that this statement was made out of, quote, anger and adrenaline, end quote. During this interview, she also admitted to deleting the, quote, go shoot his shit up, end quote, text, as well as deleting the text messages from Keyshawn where he states that, quote, Travis is a dead man walking, end quote. Now, why did she do this? According to Dominique, she did it because after she found out that Sebastian had died and that Tyler was relatively seriously wounded, they, quote, could look a certain type of way and make her look or portray her in a certain type of way that were never her intentions, end quote, after the shooting.
If it walked like a duck and quacked like a duck, I don't know, Dev. My guess is it might be a duck.
Or it's a trifling witch with a BBL. I'm just saying.
That too.
Yeah, this excuse pissed me off so bad because you put all of your threats in writing and then wanted to be like, well, people could think about it a certain type of way. It could make me look bad if people found out that I was saying I was going to ask my brother and his friends to go kill my boyfriend. And then my brother and his friends showed up to my boyfriend's house, started an altercation and somebody died. I could look bad if that came out. Girl, what? But those are all the statements that we're going to go through for now. But let's get into the physical evidence in this case. When it comes to physical evidence, the main thing that police had were all 39 shell casings found at the crime scene belonging to Travis's AR-15 rifle, which does confirm that even if he did see Sebastian and Tyler point guns at him, he was the only one shooting. The police were also able to seize Travis's AR-15 rifle as evidence. And finally, and potentially the most important piece of physical evidence in this case, is the video evidence provided by Travis's Ring camera, as well as security footage from some of the neighboring stores and super centers along the way, because they were able to follow the black Cadillac. The security footage shows when the four men arrived, that they arrived in a black Cadillac, and it shows the car parking about 300 feet down the street from where Travis's home is. The men can then be seen getting out of the car, going to the trunk, pulling something out of the trunk, and then start walking towards the house. And Travis's Ring doorbell camera caught some of the knocking and them asking to speak to Travis. It also captures the moment of Travis retreating and reemerging from his home with his AR-15 rifle and the Cadillac fleeing the scene while you can hear the gunshots. So, with all these conflicting statements and a little bit of conflicting information, I'm sure everybody at home can guess exactly what happens next, right?
I hope y'all are on the edge of your seats. What happens next, Dev?
It's time to go to trial. Yes, ma'am. Travis Rudolph goes forward with his trial where he is charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, which begins on May 24th of 2023. So during their opening statements, the prosecution argues that Travis's actions were not in self-defense. Quote, murder begins when self-defense ends, end quote. And they emphasize throughout their entire case that Travis's actions went beyond self-preservation. The prosecution stated that Travis took a, quote, semi-automatic rifle-like weapon, end quote, and pursued 4 men who were leaving his home, firing 39 times into their car. The prosecution argued that Travis was, quote, not on defense. He was on offense. He was not under attack. He was on the attack, end quote. And they concluded their statement by asserting that Travis acted out of anger and feeling of disrespect, not self-defense, and that his actions were premeditated, end quote. And I want to add the caveat here that Travis is being tried in the state of Florida. And in the state of Florida, premeditation does not mean that you made a plan or thought long about killing somebody and getting away with it or anything like that. In the state of Florida, premeditation simply means that you made the conscious decision to kill someone in that moment. That's all it takes to get premeditation and ergo first-degree murder, which is different in some jurisdictions. When it's time for the defense's argument, they opened their statement much like I opened this episode. Quote, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. end quote. The defense argued that Dominique's, quote, rage and jealousy, end quote, set the entire chain of tragic events in motion. They claimed that the four men, Keyshawn Jones, Sebastian Jean-Jacques, Tyler Robinson, and Christopher Lowe, were uninvited interlopers who initiated a physical altercation and overpowered the Rudolph brothers. The defense also asserted in their opening statement that Tyler Robinson pulled out a gun and pointed it at Travis, saying, quote, "It's demon time," end quote. And only then did Travis retrieve his AR-15 rifle to attack in self-defense. The defense further presented these four young men as, quote, vigilantes, end quote, who conspired to retaliate and kill Travis, not to merely talk to him. The defense also took shots at the investigation. They asserted a, quote, shoddy investigation, end quote, by police, accusing the police officers of bias and failure to collect critical evidence that would support Travis's statement of self-defense. So I'm sure you can gather we have very two different definitions of what happened according to the prosecution and according to the defense. So now let's get into some of these key witnesses, starting with who the defense believes to be the catalyst for everything, Miss Dominique Jones. And here, Dominique maintains her same story that she got into an altercation with Travis where he was physically violent with her, and she left his home in tears and told her brother and his friends about it. However, it wasn't until cross-examination where we got into the, quote, "go shoot up his shit," end quote, text, and her deleting them from her phone before she turned them over to the police. It is under cross-examination that Dominique claims that when she sent the text messages, quote, "go shoot his shit up," end quote, she meant anything but Travis himself, like his house or his car. So according to Dominique, she wanted them to go destroy his property, not shoot up his house, which I think most people would interpret said text as go shoot up his house, where his entire family lives.
Right. And then the subsequent text from Keyshawn that said he's a dead man walking. If I meant anything but Travis, I'd be like, whoa. Dead man walking? No, just his car. Just his property that's not his house. I don't want you to harm him. So, yeah, it's not making a lot of sense to me.
No, it's not making a lot of sense at all. And it wasn't making any sense to the defense either, because this is also where we find out what exactly was on Miss Ma'am's phone. In addition to these text messages, we find out that the defense also questioned her about her search history that was found on her phone, as it was discovered that she was looking up things like, quote, "stand your ground in Florida," end quote, quote, "self-defense in Florida," end quote, quote, "prosecuting attorney Mark Schneider's net worth," end quote, and quote, "pro bono," end quote. Now, why are those last two pieces of information relevant? Because Mark Schreiner is Travis's defense attorney. So why are you looking up your ex's defense attorney, Miss Ma'am, just days after the incident?
Did he already have the attorney at this point?
Correct.
So I'm sure she could assume what his defense was going to be, because knowing Florida's history, I kind of assumed there was going to be a stand your ground defense. But I do find it interesting that she's looking up his net worth.
Right? I find that interesting as well. And here's actually something that's really interesting. I was going to talk about this later, but I'll talk about it now because it has come up naturally. When Travis's defense attorney actually made a motion to file formally under Stand Your Ground, which based on my research seems to be a very specific set of circumstances for Stand Your Ground, that motion was denied. So they were not actually allowed to go under a defense of fully stand your ground. He was allowed to go under self-defense, but he couldn't specifically quote and say he was standing his ground.
Did they say why?
The judge basically stated that there was enough evidence to allow a jury to decide what happened. There was enough conflicting statements on either side that a jury would decide what happened in this case.
Got it.
The defense also questioned her claims of having a physical altercation with Travis And specifically, they questioned why she never reported said incident, and that a detective specifically noted in one of the reports that she did not have any visible injuries, which I understand why they bring it up. I do. But quite honestly, like, you caught her in several other lies at this point. I don't know if we need to attack the you weren't actually physically assaulted. I don't know if we need to do that, but you know, that is what it is.
Right.
Again, this woman has factually abused Travis. We know this, but we can't say it never happened to her just because we don't have video proof.
Exactly.
I, in my heart of hearts, want to believe that Travis didn't do that, but I'm not going to sit here and be naive, in my opinion. Just in case. Travis, don't sue me, babes. Don't sue me. I'm rooting for you, for real. But now we get into the part you have all been waiting for. The bombshell information that Cam postponed for y'all in part 1. It's time for that bombshell information, which actually, it makes sense to talk about it right now because this is technically when everybody found out. So you remember when I said that Travis and Dominique's relationship was very convoluted? Well, it wasn't just convoluted because Travis wasn't claiming Dominique as his girlfriend. Not convoluted because the couple is in this weird situationship of will they, won't they, what's really going on here. It's mostly convoluted because during her entire relationship with Travis, Dominique is legally married to another man named Andre Gingson. Yes. So she's over here at this man's house, flipping, acting crazy, putting her hands on him, forcing him to call this other woman and make her uncomfortable for texting another woman and saying some messed up stuff about her. I'll give her that. Meanwhile, she has been married their entire relationship.
Now let's define married. You said legally married. Are they in a relationship together?
According to Dominique, and according to Dominique only, her and her husband were separated.
What does the husband say?
We don't know. I don't have the other half of the tea. I'm so sorry.
Gosh. But she's only what? How old?
At the time of the incident, she was 25. So during the trial, she's like 27.
Things can change quickly, but legally married and separated at 25 is very quick.
Very. Which, I'm not going to lie to you, is a little bit why I don't believe it.
Do we know if he lived in Miami?
I do not know. I know very little about the husband. I know very little about him. The reason I question it so much is because if you and your husband are actually separated and you don't want nothing to do with him, why does Travis not know? Travis claims that he never knew she was married. And I believe him on that fully. And I especially believe him on that because both Dominique and her entire family went out of their way to make sure that Travis did not know she was married. Because her whole family knows she married.
I forgot he done met the whole family.
He done met the whole fam. And none of y'all cared about that young man to tell him that, hey, she over here tripping and doing all this crazy stuff. Meanwhile, she's married. And the right situation is if you were actually separated, you will file something. And I will say, I'm going to put this out there. I'm coming from a hurt place. I am. I'm very much talking from a hurt place. So that's why I don't believe her that she was actually separated from her husband. Because if you were actually separated from your husband, you would have something filed.
Right.
I will say she was divorced by the time of the trial, but I don't know when she actually got that paperwork finished.
And, you know, I will say the one thing, interestingly, in her defense on this specific point, I think is the fact that the husband was not subpoenaed for trial.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know that.
Oh, we don't know if he had to testify at trial?
I don't personally know. I did not really look into him specifically because it's like, I feel like he has tried to bury himself and I wanted him to have that, in all honesty.
Got you. Okay. If he did not testify at trial, if he was not subpoenaed, then I would think they were truly separated. For whatever reason, they didn't go through with the divorce. Divorces are expensive. I don't know what her money situation was. I don't know what his money situation was. That could be another reason that they didn't go through with the divorce. But I would think that if they were actively still together and married, that he potentially would have been subpoenaed to also testify to how she was in a relationship, like how she was as a partner around that time.
I don't think they can legally do that, though, because she would be under spousal protection. But I don't know if it counts because she's not a defendant. I don't know how that works out legally. I do know there's some level of spousal protection, but I think it only protects you if you're a defendant. So I don't know. Maybe they could, maybe they couldn't.
Does it protect if you're not currently spouses?
It protects you from anything that happened within the marriage.
Got you. Okay.
Let's say you got married and your husband committed some fraud and you didn't say anything when you were married. You got quietly divorced a year later. My understanding anyways is that you don't technically have to testify against him because you still have spousal protection because it happened within the confines of your marriage. Hashtag not legal advice. I'm an urban planner. I stay in my lane every time.
Right. And I'm in tech. We just watch and consume a lot of true crime and learn from that.
Exactly. I watch Emily D. Baker every week. I am a full-blown law nerd. So again, this is when we find out this bombshell that baby girl is married and she was tripping because Travis was cheating. Even though she was married, she hid the fact that she was married from him. And again, if you're separated from your husband, what's the point of him knowing? Why is it bad that he knows? Like, that's why I'm saying, like, what are you hiding? And I'm sure that you, Cam, and our lovely listeners at home can guess that the defense had a field day with this information. Because what do you mean you assaulted this man for cheating on you when you're actively cheating on your husband? In a legal sense. In a legal sense, you were actively cheating on your husband. But Dominique states that her marital status was none of his business because her and her husband were separated, even though there was no paperwork supporting the fact that they were separated. And the defense kind of uses this as a means to really destroy Dominique's credibility, because not only did she initially lie to police or withhold information from police, I guess is the better way to say that, in my opinion, she also actively lied to Travis and then was rude on the stand, was curt on the stand, was trying to have attitude with the defense attorney. And I don't think she realized that it made her look bad when she was like, my marital status didn't matter. He didn't ask. Oh, I didn't realize that we needed to ask people if they were married, if they were actively dating. My bad.
Right.
And I want to add that I watched some parts of Dominique's direct and cross-examination. Quite honestly, she really got on my nerves as a witness, so it was hard for me to watch her entire testimony. But there is one thing that I took away very clearly, and that is that she was still mad at Travis. Because even when she brought up the incident about him saying the other girl's body was better than hers, you could tell that she was still pissed. Like, in her soul, her chest hurt when she had to say it in court. And part of me is like, girl, I understand that you're mad, but at the end of the day, this is a murder trial. Somebody died. And the defense is saying that somebody died as a direct result of your anger, rage, and jealousy. Maybe you need to not show that you are angry and jealous on the stand. Maybe that's a good look.
Maybe.
So the next key witness would be Keyshawn Jones. And during Keyshawn's direct examination, he told the same story that he told before, that he and his friends just went over to Travis's to talk, and that Travis is the one who started the physical altercation, chased them down, opened fire, and then they tried to leave. And he stuck with the story that he told at the beginning, that everybody was unarmed and that they only came to talk. And during cross-examination, the defense begins pitting the witnesses against each other. And he starts asking Keyshawn if he knows that Tyler has already confirmed that he did have a gun and that you all knew about it. But Keyshawn continues to say that he didn't know he had a gun. He also is confronted with the fact that Tyler said that the gun in question was actually sold to him by you, Keyshawn. And Keyshawn continues to say, I don't know nothing about that. That ain't got nothing to do with me. And finally, the defense is able to highlight the fact that Keyshawn only gave that initial 10-minute statement to the detective and that he never gave an official sworn statement to her, ever. He was also never followed up on, never asked more questions, and he wasn't even asked the question of what he meant when he stated the text of, quote, Travis is a dead man walking, end quote. He was never asked about it by detectives. Now, of course, he tried to sit on the stand and downplay it to say that it was just a figure of speech. It didn't mean that he was actually going to go kill Travis. But honestly, even if that's the case, that's not really the defense's point. The defense's point is more so that you did that and you were never investigated for it, which adds to their argument that this is a shoddy investigation.
Very true, because how do you not ask somebody what they mean when you have text evidence of them basically saying that this person is going to die, and you have that person saying that somebody with them pointed a gun at them and made them fear for their life?
Well, if you're defense, you don't do it because you have a bias in this case. But put a pin in that, because I'm going to answer that question when we talk about Detective Emily's testimony. Because before that, we have to go through Tyler's testimony. Mr. I'm changing my story every time I get a chance, Tyler. And again, he sticks to the story that everybody before him had. And he adds that he was shot while trying to escape the car because the car was being shot at. And again, because this man's story has changed at least 3 different times, the defense has a field day with undermining his credibility. Because again, at the trial, he claims that he doesn't remember any of the specific details, yet seems to remember the details that make him look better in the situation, such as forgetting the fact that he started the physical altercation by punching Travis in the face, and him bringing his gun to the scene and discarding said gun at the scene. Travis' brother, Daryl, also took the stand in this case, and he too was a victim of the jump and what happened to him and Travis. And on the stand, he stated that the men were, quote, trying to kill them, end quote. And he further states that he also saw Tyler Robinson point a gun at Travis's head. And he also stated that he believed Dominique orchestrated this entire hit in a lot of ways on his brother, and that his brother was only trying to protect him and himself. And he specifically talks about how the fight ended up in the road towards the car because Daryl was still trying to go after the men who had initially attacked him and his brother. That's how he got into the road and was still fighting with them after Travis had left the house with his AR-15. Travis' mother, Linda, also testified and stated that her son's actions were in self-defense. And she also testified to the horrible phone calls and text messages that she received from Dominique after the initial fight. And one of these text messages stated, quote, "Mom, you better come and get your son Travis because I'm gonna have my brothers and his friends come up and kill him," end quote. You texted that to his mother?
Oh, Dev, that's just a figure of speech.
Oh, right. I forgot.
I'm gonna have them come and kill him. Kill his property, kill his soul by messing up his car. That's what she meant. Clearly, that's what she meant here.
Obviously, and I forgot. I'm the one who's misinterpreting things and viewing them a certain type of way, according to Dominique. So now it is time to answer your questions about the investigation specifically, because we're going to get into the testimony of lead detective Miss Emily Vanderlaan, who testified about her investigation into this case and that she quickly concluded that the incident at the hospital was connected to the incident that was reported at Travis's house, and quickly made the decision that Travis attempted to murder the 4 young men that were in the car. Under cross-examination, we learned that this is only her 4th case as a lead detective, which is not a bad thing. Everybody's got to start somewhere, right? But the problem is, Emily is a horrible lead detective who doesn't seem to be inquisitive enough or asking enough questions for my personal liking. And also on a personal note, I just found her incredibly unlikable. For starters, she was heavily scrutinized for her 2 very short initial interviews with Keyshawn and Christopher, who, by her understanding of the case, from her perspective, were the victims of an attempted murder. Why do you never get sworn statements from who you believe to be victims of attempted murder?
Right.
And when she was scrutinized about not asking enough questions about the threatening text messages or any of the actions that Dominique or Keyshawn took, she blatantly dismisses them as not important to the case. She also did not seize or forensically analyze anyone else's phone, including Christopher Lowe or Daryl Rudolph. And initially, she did not even search for any discarded weapons along the route the Cadillac took when fleeing Travis's home. So this is important because remember, Travis says that both Sebastian and Tyler pointed guns at him. We found Tyler's gun. They never found Sebastian's alleged gun, but they never even looked for it. And when asked about this, the detective kept saying it would have been a waste of taxpayers' money. It would have been a waste of taxpayers' money for you to do your due diligence in what you believe to be a murder and 3 attempted murders. That would have been a waste of taxpayers' money. Are you crazy?
That's actually what the taxes are paying for.
Thank you. Also, this is Florida.
Y'all not paying that much in taxes.
Thank you.
And I feel like as a detective, a key thing you have to do is say, okay, I am going to take this victim's statement, but in my investigation, I always have to consider, but what if what they're saying is not true? And I have to investigate that route. As an investigator, as a detective, I'm neither of those. I just watch a lot of true crime, specifically a lot of Lieutenant Joe Kinda. But I feel like a good investigator / detective investigates multiple routes, investigates multiple potential truths to get to the real truth. You don't just get a story and stick with it.
Absolutely. Especially in a case like this where you have 2 completely conflicting stories. Because even if you don't believe Travis's story, as a detective, it is also your job to find all the evidence that proves his story is bull. That's also your job.
Exactly.
Like, don't hand the defense the best case ever. Don't do that. But the final point I want to bring up when it specifically comes to the lack of looking for the second gun, in response to this, her statement was, quote, "I had no reason to believe there was an additional gun," end quote. She also stated that some of the evidence that the defense was concerned about, like lack of sworn statements, lack of forensic evidence, lack of text messages, lack of care in this case, in my opinion, was, quote, "inconsequential," end quote. And I think her statement about "I had no reason to believe there was an additional gun" really pisses me off because you already caught one of the people who you believe to be a victim lying about having a gun. So that alone is enough reason to believe that there's another gun, especially too when, again, Travis said he saw 2 people pointing a gun at him. And again, even if we want to act like this is just coincidence, that Travis, out of the 4 men there, happened to pick the one man who was actually armed as pointing a gun at him, that should have been enough reason for you to go looking for it.
Right. And then also, as a detective, it's your job. Not only the DA's, not only the prosecution, it's also part of your job to ensure that the prosecution has enough evidence to secure a conviction. And part of that is in doing a robust investigation. If you do a shoddy investigation, you're handing the defense something on a silver platter.
Exactly. And it's one of those things that aggravates me. It's like, you're not doing your job. You're not giving care to the victims when you don't do your job and do what you're supposed to do. Like, how are we supposed to get justice for the victims if you want to do a half-assed job?
Right.
And now we're on to our final key witness, who is Travis himself, as Travis takes the stand in his own defense. And Travis maintains his same defense that he acted in self-defense after the 4 men came to his house and attacked him and his brother. He again stated that Tyler, quote, "sucker punched him," end quote, and then pulled a gun on him, leading to him retrieving his rifle from the home. He also claimed that Sebastian pointed a gun at him through the front windshield, while Tyler pointed a gun from behind the car door. When asked why he fired so many shots, he stated that he fired 39 shots because he, quote, "had to neutralize the threat," end quote, and only reacted that way because he saw 2 firearms pointed at him and his brother. He also disagreed with the prosecution's assertion that the car was immediately fleeing from the scene and stated that the car was facing him and would have had to come forward to turn around in order to leave, which again is why he felt that his safety was in danger. When it was time for Travis to go under cross-examination, it seemed like the prosecutor was more interested in breaking down Travis's character and love life and trying to make him out to be a cheater rather than focusing on the fact that the prosecution believes that he is a murderer, according to her case. And there's one specific instance that really rubbed me the wrong way during her cross-examination, because it's really giving, he reminds me of my ex. It's giving, she's questioning from a hurt place. It's giving, I'm not questioning about the case that's in front of me. I'm thinking about what my ex did to me 5 years ago. And to illustrate that point, I'm going to let y'all listen to this specific instance and just let me know what you think. And you all can be the judge of that.
I want to talk about that call Dominique made to Kyla that evening. Why was she making that call?
Sustain.
Judge, he would know what he was asked to do.
What's the question?
It was a FaceTime call in front of Mr. Rudolph to the young woman allegedly he was cheating with. So I asked, why was that call being made? He would know, if he knows.
If you know, you may answer.
Well, it wasn't cheating, but she made the call looking for answers pretty much.
And so you had to convince her then, based on that conversation, that you weren't in fact cheating, right?
It wasn't cheating, but she was looking for answers that she didn't get anything out of.
And she didn't believe you.
No, she didn't.
She thought you were still cheating.
If that's what you want to call it, but it wasn't cheating.
And you were cheating, weren't you, Mr. Rudolph?
No, ma'am.
Are you sure about that?
At that time, I was a single man.
Ah. So you're not in a relationship and you're free to screw whoever you want.
Sustain.
Right? I didn't ask that question before, Judge.
Sustain.
Oh, so you're a single man, so you can screw whoever you want. I mean, technically, yeah, that's kind of how it works. Also, if we want to talk about cheating, you can't really bring that up when your girl over here is legally married and did not tell Travis. That's all I'm saying. If I had a witness who had that type of history, I'm staying quiet about any cheating.
Exactly. And that was the thing that aggravated me, because I was like, ma'am, do you not realize that you're throwing stones when you live in a glass house? The glass house being that his girlfriend, because you're so adamant about calling her his girlfriend so that you can paint him as a cheater, is married. And not only is she married, but she, on the stand, stood by the fact that that was none of his business. So if her being married is none of his business, then why is Kayla or any other woman he may or may not be talking to any of her business?
Exactly.
But that statement specifically, I was like, oh, you're not asking him. You're coming from a hurt place, because there's no way that you would say the words, oh, you just get to screw whoever you want in court, in a court of law. As a Black woman, are you crazy? I will also say that I do hold this prosecutor to a higher standard because she is a Black woman, and we can't be out here looking crazy. And statements like, oh, so you get to screw whoever you want is so unprofessional, because again, this is a murder trial. So let's focus on the alleged murder.
Right.
Because your witnesses have some actual factual problems with their statements. Whether or not he was actually cheating or not is actually not that big of a deal, in my humble opinion.
In the context of a murder trial, it's not.
Exactly. Also, in the context of, even if he was cheating on her, we also have videos of her punching him in the face. Like, it's not like she's some sweet, innocent woman who is in a bad situation. Now this big old scary man is cheating on her. That's not how this goes. Especially because he testified after her, after she made herself look like a jerk. So yeah, there were definitely other moments of her cross-examination that I didn't care for, but there were some parts of her cross-examination that were really good, specifically talking about how are you able to see 30 feet in front of you at midnight, and questions like that that actually questioned his state of mind and his ability to actually fear for his life. Some of those questions were very good. But any question essentially where she was trying to undermine his character to make him out to be a cheater just wasn't doing it for me. It just doesn't hit the way that you think it does, sis. So when it came time for closing arguments, The prosecution reiterated that Travis fired 39 rounds into a vehicle that was driving away, killing one man and wounding another, and that this was not self-defense. They emphasized that Travis had, quote, no legal justification to pursue the fleeing men, end quote. They argued that Travis's choice of an AR-15 and the number of shots fired demonstrated premeditation and an indifference to human life. And they stressed that the videos shown during trial, quote, don't lie, end quote, and showed Travis Rudolph as the aggressor. During the defense's closing argument, they argued that the prosecution, quote, forgot to talk to you about the facts of the case, about what the witnesses said, about Detective Vanderlaan and her lack of investigation, end quote. The defense maintained that the four men who came to Travis's home that night were, quote, vigilantes, end quote, who came to, quote, retaliate and kill Travis, end quote, making his actions self-defense. And the defense also argued that the videos do not show the whole story, that it was, quote, impossible, end quote, to see everything that happened at the moment of truth. The defense also addressed Dominique's statements, arguing these were literal threats, concrete proof this was a planned attack, a conspiracy by Dominique to retaliate, maybe even kill Travis. And they closed their statement highlighting what they considered the hundreds of conflicts and reasonable doubts in the prosecution's case due to alleged police incompetence and witnesses lying to protect themselves. After the 2-week trial, the jury began their deliberations on June 7th, 2023. And they had options when it came to this case. They could find him guilty of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder, but they could also consider lesser charges like second-degree murder or manslaughter. And within just 4 hours, they returned with their verdict. And Travis Rudolph was found not guilty on all 4 counts against him. Immediately after the verdict, Travis expressed his relief, stating, quote, it means everything. I finally got my freedom back. I can get back to my life, end quote. The Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office also released a statement that it respected the jury's decision despite disagreeing with the verdict. In the aftermath of the verdict, Travis and his attorney, Mark Schneider, expressed gratitude to the jurors for listening to the truth and making the right decision based on self-defense. Travis also acknowledged Sebastian's death with condolences, but stated, quote, for every action, there's a reaction, end quote, and that people must, quote, take responsibility for their actions, end quote. Mark Schneider asserted that, quote, the wrong people were on trial, end quote, and that Dominique Jones and the others were, quote, responsible for Sebastian's death, end quote. However, in the end, no other individuals involved in the incident were ever charged with any crime. Detective Emily Vanderlaan ultimately resigned from her position as a lead detective, and Travis expressed his intentions to pursue his football career again and to get into real estate and trucking. He later signed with the Orlando Guardians in October 2023, but would be released in 2024. And as we sit here today, I am unsure of his current professional status, but that is the end of our story, friend.
Wow. I'm pleasantly surprised that the jury returned a not guilty verdict. However, I am surprised that there were no other charges filed because really, Keyshawn and Tyler and Chris should be facing attempted murder charges. At the very least, Tyler.
Absolutely, but I'm not surprised because it kind of builds doubt into your case. If they ever were to try to take them to court, the first thing the defense attorney is going to say is, well, a year ago, you thought they were a victim and you couldn't nail this other guy. So now you're trying to nail my client. But my client was a victim.
That's very true. You got to look at it from the DA's perspective.
Exactly. But I think it's stupid. I think the fact that he was charged in this case at all is ridiculous to me. Quite honestly, I think there is no other better example of self-defense and stand your ground. 4 men came to my house to jump me.
With 2 guns.
with 2 guns, confirmed one, and I'm convinced that the other one was thrown on the side of the road and just not looked for. And that's on video. And I know that some people felt some type of way about him having an AR-15. This is Florida. Sorry. I think he was well within his rights to do what he did. Because at the end of the day, they came onto his property, attacked him and his brother, which also he is also allowed to protect his brother with deadly force on his property. And again, the people who came to his house, where's all their charges? Because not only did they attack Travis and his brother, but you also have just disturbing the peace, causing issues on private property, all that other stuff, like all the misdemeanor things that nobody cares about for real. But to be very honest, Sebastian doesn't even know Travis. He's never at that house if, one, Dominique doesn't text her brother a lie, because let's be real, I fully believe that Keyshawn and his friends got tied up in this because of a lie. I don't believe that Dominique told her brother exactly what she did. I believe that just like she did the first time she spoke to the police, she conveniently left out the part where she put her hands on this man.
Right. And that's also my other thing, my other piece of commentary on this. Why are there 4 people in this? Why does he have to die? Even if you want to fight him, and I think there's something to say, people don't really organize fights anymore. They're fighting to the death, and you got to kind of assume that the other person's going to intend to kill you, whatever. But it's not like this is some random. You know Travis. Why couldn't this have been a conversation between you and him like there has been before? Why did you have to bring anyone else? And why do you have to do it in the middle of the night?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Everything about this feels like a hit.
Yeah.
And what pissed me off is the fact that the DA believed these people who, in my opinion, orchestrated a hit.
Exactly. And honestly, as Travis, I would be afraid that these people are still out, because I'm sure they're mad that he killed their friend. And then the other thing I will say about the self-defense piece is, especially if what he said was true, that they would have had to come towards the house to actually leave. I can also understand why he fired off shots. Now, where you probably thought we would have some disagreement is on the AR-15, like the machine piece. I generally don't see the utility of something that can fire off that many rounds, but I don't think that's relevant in this case. It was his weapon. He had legally to defend himself.
Correct. And honestly, that's not really the only part I thought we would disagree. I wasn't sure if you would agree that this was stand your ground. I figured that you would agree that this was a bad investigation and that the evidence was sloppy and that the witnesses were very much lying and working against him and everything else. But I didn't know if you would agree that it would be stand your ground, which I fully believe this is stand your ground.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the specific stipulations that Florida law applies to that. But from my understanding of stand your ground, I feel like it falls well into it. Like, you came onto my property, threatened me, threatened the people on my property, made me fear for my life, made me fear for other people's lives. And I had to come back at you with force in order to get you off my property and make myself feel safe.
Exactly. Because that's the number one thing with stand your ground in Florida is you have zero duty to retreat. He does not have to go back into his house and hide. You set foot on his property, he's allowed to use deadly force, full stop. And that's not even just stand your ground in Florida. That's also castle doctrine. It's like a doctrine that goes way, way back before stand your ground and everything actually had laws. It essentially goes back to colonial times of you were allowed to kill any man that pissed you off on your property. But that's what that is. And again, it was, in my opinion, he was so well within his right to do that. But I especially feel that way when I really feel like a hit was orchestrated against him, because what really makes me feel like he truly feared for his life is because he knew that she had already said that somebody was going to come up and kill him. Somebody was going to come up and kill him. She had said this to at least 3 different people. And now there's 4 dudes at my house jumping me. One of whom is the little brother of the girl that I'm messing with. I'm sure that is what set off these men are here to kill me.
Right.
But to kind of wrap up on that, I am glad that this chapter of Travis's life is behind him. I am glad that he gets to continue to live a full life and that a Black man does not suffer the fate of being put in prison without proper due process, that he got his day in court and that he won. I feel very bad for Sebastian's family because at the end of the day, they lost somebody, and presumably a young man. I don't actually know exactly how old Sebastian was, but they also lost somebody in their family senselessly because he was dragged into some unnecessary foolishness that, again, I believe to be started with a lie. And also, Ms. Dominique, dragging your little brother into your mess is insanity. And maybe I feel this way because I have a younger sibling, and I would never drag my younger sibling into my foolishness specifically. My older siblings, I can drag them into my mess because they may or may not come. They got more life experience than I do. But my younger siblings, you put your brother's life in danger because you felt some type of way that he was out here doing the same thing you were, hiding a potential other relationship.
Exactly.
Girl, get a grip.
It's just messy. It's just messy and unnecessary.
Exactly.
So, as we wrap up today's discussion, we are going to move into our segment called Today in Crime, where we'll discuss a crime or a crime-related event that took place on this day. So on July 18th, 1989, Rebecca Schaeffer, a sitcom actress, is murdered, and her death would prompt anti-stalking legislation. On July 18th, 1989, the 21-year-old actress Rebecca Schaeffer is murdered at her Los Angeles home by Robert John Bardo, a mentally unstable man who had been stalking her. Schaeffer's death helped lead to the passage in California of legislation aimed at preventing stalking. Rebecca was born November 6, 1967, in Eugene, Oregon. She worked as a teenage model and had a short stint on the daytime soap opera One Life to Live, but was best known for co-starring with Pam Dauber in the television sitcom My Sister Sam. Bardo, born in 1970, had written Schaeffer letters and unsuccessfully tried to gain access to the set of My Sister Sam before showing up at her apartment on July 18, 1989. The obsessed fan had reportedly obtained the actress's home address through a detective agency, which located it through records at the California Department of Motor Vehicles. On the day of the murder, Rebecca reportedly complied with Bardo's request for an autograph when he appeared at her home and then asked him to leave. He returned a short time later, and the actress, who was reportedly waiting for someone to deliver a script, answered the door again. Bardo then shot and killed her. Arrested the next day in Tucson, Arizona, Bardo was later prosecuted by the Los Angeles County District Attorney Marcia Clark, who later became famous as a prosecutor in the O.J. Simpson trial. In 1991, Bardo was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 1994, California passed the Driver's Privacy Protection Act, which prevented the Department of Motor Vehicles from releasing private addresses. And that is what happened on this day in crime. If you found the story interesting, leave a performing arts emoji in the comments.
Wow, Cam, that story is very heavy. I guess in my head, I didn't expect her murder to be so instant. I don't know what I was thinking happened, but in my head, it was not a point blank experience. That's crazy. I am glad that legislation was passed as a result of her death, but it's crazy to me that we had to make it a law that you can't just be giving out people's personal information. It's crazy that that just wasn't a thing.
Right. And I think this was a time when that information used to be hidden behind, a locked door. And if a detective needs to find it out, they usually have a good reason. And this was probably a time where it was fairly new that Joe Schmo off the street could just pay somebody to get that information. But there are two things about this that I want to discuss. One is the quick nature. Stalking can escalate quickly. And the other point is that stalking legislation differs widely across states because in some states, it's not necessarily illegal to follow somebody.
Yeah.
And it could be very hard to actually prosecute somebody for stalking in certain states, because how do you differentiate somebody just exercising their freedom as a citizen from intimidating you and threatening you? And unfortunately, for people who have been the victims of stalking, I'm sure it is very difficult to actually find peace of mind, especially when you don't know who your stalker is.
Exactly. And I will say one of the things that I find really interesting is there's a creator that I follow on YouTube. She has several channels. The big one is Bows versus the World. If you follow her on Twitch, she's Big Boss Bows on Twitch. But she talks about cases of stalking very often. And she talks about how it is so difficult to prosecute a stalking case because it's not enough that you're scared. You being scared is not seen as somebody violating your rights or actually harming you. And one of the things that she talks about a lot, and I've started doing in my own life because I agree with her, is to put as much separation between the person and the stalker as much as possible. So never use terms like my stalker or so-and-so's stalker, because at the end of the day, the stalker craves the connection. And in most cases, it starts off as a positive thing. They want to be a positive feeling in your life. And when you refuse that or don't want them to be a positive feeling in your life, they will accept being a negative as long as it means they're attached to you. So as long as it's my stalker, your stalker, their stalker, they still feel that connection. But when it's the stalker, the weirdo, the loser in the corner, it helps to put as much space between them as possible. And I just feel so bad that that happened to her and her light was put out so early. She was so young.
Right.
By some weirdo. I'm not saying he's a weirdo because he's mentally ill. I'm saying he's a weirdo because he's stalking basically a child.
Yeah, she was just 21. And nowadays, we sort of take for granted how untouchable certain celebrities are. But back then, that wasn't really the case, especially for somebody who was maybe just famous for a particular show. And they were famous to that audience, but not famous at the global level or at the national level.
Right.
I even had a professor in college who had a stalker, and he had to have all his information scrubbed from the internet.
That's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that we live in a society where I have to pick up and change my whole life for the actions of some weirdo.
Right.
And that's still not a crime. The fact that I had to come off the internet, the fact that I had to basically turn into a hermit to have any sense of peace is not a crime. And I've heard it before, this whole thing like, well, they haven't done anything to you. Well, technically, he didn't do anything to her either. And then she died. The thing he did to her was kill her. It just makes me so mad. But thank you for sharing that story with me, Cam. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on part 2 of this episode. I'd also, again, like to thank the Law and Crime Network, Natalie Lawyer Chick, and Stay Awake Crime and Psychology for providing most of the material for this episode. If you'd like to check out photos related to this case, be sure to follow us at Criminalish Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Listeners, if you like what you hear, be sure to tell a friend and leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to the Criminalish Podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel and feel free to leave any comments or questions. As always, stay nosy, my friends. Bye.
Bye.